All right. This is Tyler James here, live with another ComixLaunch interview. I'm really excited for this conversation we're about to have because my guest today has been working as a freelance comic book artist and writer since 2002 for some of the biggest comic book publishers in the world, including Image Comics, IDW, Oni Press, Devil's Due Publishing, Top Cow, Marvel, and DC. And some of his creator-owned work includes The Beauty and the Realm from Image Comics, as well as Red Mother for Boom Studios and 40 Seconds for Comixology Originals. And he has just launched a massive horror hardcover anthology project called HAUNTHOLOGY, which is on Kickstarter. So I'm very excited to bring Jeremy Haun onto the show. Jeremy, great to connect with you. How you doing, man?
Hey, man. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. You've got a big project on Kickstarter and a long resume that we're going to dive into. And so, I never want to bury the lead on these when we've got a launch that's live. So for the uninitiated, Haunthology, what is it? What's in it? Who's going to love it? Tell us about it.
Hombologys 100. Well, no, actually, you know what? We just hit a stretch goal and we upgraded this baby. So now
I can hear the spines expanding as this thing keeps ticking up.
Exactly. We are now at 160 pages. So we've got 160 pages, an all new story that's going. I'm actually starting to work on right now, and this thing just keeps growing. It's a 160 page oversized hardcover horror comics graphic novel. This is a project that I started when we all went pencils down in comics. I needed something to do. I needed to find myself. I needed focus. I needed to create. You know, there's something about having work and having the ability to say something even when times are tough. And times were hella tough over the past year. And I created a series of short stories that dealt with the feelings, the emotions, all the things that we were going through and processing. I wanted to talk about, but I wanted to talk about them in ways, you know, this is horror, and the best horror is social commentary. If you look at George Romero talking about race relations or talking about consumerism with his, you know, Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead, those films, that kind of commentary comes out of strife. It comes out of the world around us. And I wanted to take the things that I was feeling, that we all were feeling, and I made comic stories about it. And now it's here.
Yeah, I love that. And, you know, we're sort of in a weird time, like this whole 2020 to 2021, you know, I mean, 2020 very much was like a horror movie. Right now, it's sort of like, are we in the, is it safe yet? Or is this like that false happy ending of of most horror movies, right? Where, you know, new variants swoop in and, oh, it gets worse. Like, but wait, you know, the monster's still not dead. But yeah, it's definitely been like a weird and crazy year. I know, you know, for me and for ComixLaunch, like I end up working with a lot of creators that are primarily focused on sort of a Kickstarter first mentality. And this past year is actually a great year for so many of them. Many have had their best crowdfunding efforts ever and really like leveled things up. And you know, I mean, and like for me, like financially and business wise, at least according to my accountant and my increased taxes, like 2020 was a great year. But a couple of the sales channels that in the past I'd relied on, things like Diamond, like 2020 lowest year of sales we'd ever had publishing through there, and then conventions was a total goose egg for the first time in forever. And so I know for someone like yourself who has, you know, a long track record and we're extremely busy in the mainstream, that pencils down was a real thing. And so, like, you know, what was that like? What was it like to go from having, you know, way too much to do as a work for hire, in demand writer / artist, comic creator, to, hey, X, Y, and Z is getting paused, and now what?
It was brutal. I mean, the reality of this industry is you have to plan ahead as much as humanly possible. I had a year's worth of contracts lined out. I knew what I was doing. I knew what 2020 was going to be like. And then right after C2E2, you know, we're at C2E2, we're all sitting there talking about things, looking at each other going, this might be bad. You know, we the next week was supposed to be Emerald City Comic Con in Seattle. I had that, you know, I was going to head there. 2 weeks after that was Planet Comic Con in Kansas City. You know how, what that, you know, you talked about that number, you know, like how much of your income, your annual income comes from trade shows, from these conventions. Being at comic conventions, you know, ends up being for a lot of people 25, 30, even more % of their income, their annual income. And for me, it was a big hit, both financially, but also emotionally. You know, I went from having the connection, you know, you're so excited when con season, and con season now is, I mean, almost has quotation fingers around it.
Yeah.
Con season is almost 365 plus days a year.
Yeah. Days that end in Y now are con season.
Right. But, you know, but it was, you know, it was a huge change, and I had to adjust. But then every project that I had shifted in some way. I was still very fortunate, for instance, to be able to continue work on the Red Mother at Boom. They were like, hey, we're gonna, you know, we believe in this, we believe in you guys, just keep working, you know, keep working through that. That was a lifesaver. Same with Comixology. Comixology, we lined up, you know, we had lined up the 40 seconds. It's a digital format, so they could keep, you know, there's no physical thing, so they kept us working on that. But other projects stopped completely or died on the vine or whatever it was. And I think that when you're used to consistently having output, when you have planned out your year and suddenly, you know, everything's wiped off the map, you have to pivot. And, you know, I mean, I don't know about you, but like, I kind of hate the word pivot right now. I have said recently, I'm all out of pivots about 15 times.
Yeah. I can feel that. And, you know, getting back to some sense of normalcy, even to the extent that we joked that at least when the pandemic first hit, because I had already worked from home and my wife already worked from home, like, oddly enough, the biggest disruption to our lives was he learned how to crawl out of his crib for the first time. And all of a sudden, like, you couldn't put him down for just put him down and he would fall asleep. It was like, oh, nap time is this an hour-and-a-half adventure in whisking him off to sleep. And so it was like, we felt in some ways insulated from like the big change of, oh, suddenly there's no going to office. So I think a lot of ways our worlds are different than most, but to the extent like you don't realize how much that there were certain things of normalcy that you could even no longer count on. You know, the ability to go work at a coffee shop for a little bit, or you know, knowing that you had on your calendar these 2 or 3 weekends that you would reconnect with all of your comic friends and continue that. Yeah, it's taken its toll, I think, and a lot of us are sort of coming out of that. And I also, you know, heard from a lot of people in my community that actually, like, it was a tough time for them to be creative when it felt like the stress of finances and I'm going to die, or people that are close to me are going to get sick and all of that stuff. And so I'm wondering, like, how did you create it when things were anxious, or has that kind of always been something that you've used as, you know, art as therapy, art as a way to get through things or make sense of things? What was it like for you?
Yeah, I think that I've always used art as a way to channel my energy, to channel rage or channel fear or any of those things. Yeah. I made things. I think the trick was moving from a model, and I've tried to do this for a long time, but I think that moving from a model where you are making things on someone else's schedule or because you're supposed to make things, to truly making things because that is where your heart is, where your head is in the moment. That was incredibly important for me. I moved to having stories that I needed to tell because they were important to me in the moment. And talking about losing people in your life, I wrote about that. I drew stories about that. Fear, I wrote about that and drew about that. So it became very, very specific and very, very honed during all this.
Yeah.
And it saved me, I think.
Yeah. So, talk to me about, and one thing that you did here, like in terms, and this is, I think, good advice, especially for the freelancers out there, or even just for anyone that's just trying to start getting work out there. When you did decide to go and channel your efforts on your own terms, creatively, what you didn't do is like, okay, I'm going to jump in and do my Game of Thrones that will take the next 20 years to get to some sense of finality or completion. You actually worked on shorts, like on some small horror shorts that are now being collected. And I had a conversation with Carl Kerschel yesterday, and so that was fresh in my mind. But it also was similar to him when he needed a break from the freelance stuff. He's like, all right, I'm going to do a weekly strip, and these strips are going to be self-contained, so you still get that sense of completion and working towards a goal that's an achievable, finishable goal, as opposed to taking on the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think that everybody has their epic, right? Like, we all have that story that we want to tell. That's like the big thing. But I think there's a thing about understanding, first of all, what you can accomplish, but then like that we need different kinds of things. You can absolutely work on your epic. You can do whatever you want to do, but there are times when you want to tell something that's just a quick expression. For me, this was about feeling, and this was about conveying feeling. I think that a lot of projects, sometimes you're trying to take a project and like push something into a shape that maybe it's not supposed to go into. Like, if you're like, okay, I'm going to do a Kickstarter for this 7-volume opus, well, that may not be the best avenue to do that way. Like, build your thing for what it's supposed to be, and ultimately do it the way you want to do. But like, for me, it was very important to understand that these stories existed as just shorts and things, and then I found the connection. I found Haunthology. I found what this was supposed to be, and especially for me, like, the realization that like my relationship with my fan base during all of this saved me. It really made a huge difference in my world. It was, first of all, through Patreon and all the various things, art sales that I would have, people would come on and they would buy the sketches that I had done for a period or whatever it was. They saved me, but also that connection, that hearing from fans and friends, and remembering that, like, even though I can't see you at a show, even though I can't shake your hand, you're still out there. You still care about what I do, and reminding me that there is a reason that I tell these stories was incredibly important to me. And then I went in and I said, okay, I did this project on my own with my fans for a year. It was just us. It was just us out there, sort of, in the wild, in this post-apocalyptic wasteland, sort of making things, right? And I was like, I can pitch this to publishers, or I can actually do this exactly in the way that I made this over the past year.
Yeah.
Where it is incredibly personal. It's just us. It's just the fans and me. I've got opportunities for shops and things like that, but because they're fans too, and they're the other component of this. But like, I just wanted to do something that connected on the purest level. I want, and look, you can also, let's be real. If you're doing a Kickstarter for a project like this, you can make all the pins and shirts and cool stuff that you want to make.
Yeah.
You don't have to necessarily, you don't have to just be like, okay, it's just the book and it's just a soft cover. Like I can make this as epic as we want to because we all are together on it.
Yeah, yeah. Like even the Kickstarter thing that I think the impact of it is almost less about the people that you can get it in front of and more about like what you can actually get in front of people. Like, whereas when you're in a diamond world, you know, you're competing for, you get, 2.5 by 3 inches of space thereabouts of up for a listing. And it's one product competing among 500 or some other products. Right. Whereas with these, and you as someone that is, for this, you're creating some cool stuff, and you've got the original art and all sorts of other things, but then you also have your extensive backlist that you can offer as add-ons and just really, blow it out and have it be something special and something that will stand out. So that is one of the great things about the Kickstarter platform. So I know there's 15 plus stretch, whatever you unlock with stretch goals in terms of stories, short stories for this. But is there 1 or 2 stories that you want to just hit to or share that or give the listeners a little bit of a tease on of what you're covering, and how the ideas for those stories sort of came about?
Yeah, like I said, each of these stories fits an element of a feeling during COVID. It was something, they're predominantly horror or horror sci-fi stories. They're a bit Lovecraftian, a bit post-apocalyptic, fantasy kind of stories. Each one of them, though, while there's definitely some really creepy horror stuff in there, there's also some real light moments, some things that were commentary on where my heart was during this. But there's also humor, right? Because the reality is, even during COVID, we had to laugh a little bit. Right. And that's
one of my favorite... we've been chatting, and you're a funny guy, so you've got to incorporate that in there. And I've often found a well-placed joke in a horror, in some of this horror, is wow, the contrast of notes is makes the joke even better, and the scary parts even better. So, think about those moments in your favorite horror movies where somebody will they'll say kind of the poignant or really funny thing, and then there's this beat, and you're like, and you breathe for a second, and then the thing eats them, and you're like, oh, come on, and I think that I needed this to be real, and I needed this to deal with all of the emotions that I was having during this. One of my favorite stories is called The Private, and this was kind of at the height of early COVID mania, and I wrote this story about a guy in a post-apocalyptic world where something has happened. There's something terrible that happened. Everything's shut down, and nothing works anymore, and he finds a working toilet. And so every day he sneaks into this building because there's one toilet that he's found that he can use, right? Yeah. And there's a closet full of toilet paper. And the reason I wrote that story was literally because I realized that we were practically in fist fights at Target in order to get toilet paper to use during this thing. So I just wanted to make this silly story about a guy that finds this functional toilet and can actually find a little bit of peace in this terrible world. Yeah, no, I love that. And the toilet, I think the toilet paper thing above everything else made me go from, always being a little skeptical about how fast civilization crumbles in your Walking Deads or your apocalyptic scenarios, to, wow, we would not last very long at all if this were as bad as some of those scenarios really worked out. It would actually be, we'd crumble like that if we're arguing over Charmin, 2 weeks in.
Oh yeah, no, we you know what, humans have the absolute ability to at one point be incredibly thoughtful and kind and absolutely generous, and absolute idiots that would push their mother into traffic for some Charmin, and that's insane to me.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's also, I think, what makes the horror genre like so ripe with possibilities. Speaking of that, I mean, horror comics have been actually really good for Comics Tribe, my publishing brand. Like some of our most successful books are horror tinged, and some of my favorite authors that work in comics also tend to work in the horror genre. At the same time, horror comics do not necessarily have all of the tricks that are available to, say, in horror movies, for example, some of the things that are used often. And so I'm curious, like, as someone that's spent a lot of time in horror, like, how do you, what are some tricks or some tips for writing horror that you've gone to? And then also, like, for a horror short, I know I have a lot of anthology people out there that listen to this show that love participating in anthologies, but like, how do you scare somebody in just a few pages, or give that sense of dread in just a few limited amount of pages?
I feel like for me, building into this, each project I try to stretch my legs a little bit. Like, I want to build new creative muscle with everything I do. And one of the things about Hauntology was I knew that I could tell a 12-issue series or a 5-issue mini series or anything like that. I can tell expanded stories. We all know how to do that to a degree. You can tell your epic, right?
Yeah.
That's what, but the reality is a glimpse and creating a true emotion, a true feeling in 1 page or 4 pages or whatever that is hard. And so I wanted to build my muscle with this. I wanted to build creative muscle and say, each story, I want to tell a 1-page story. I want to tell a 2-page story and just see if I can affect, first of all, myself, but then others with that. The trick really is understanding people and understanding emotion, understanding why things scare us. Comics horror works different than prose horror or film horror, but it's kind of in the middle. We can both show and tell. In prose, you can only tell. In film, you mostly show. So you can do things like jump scares. Well, jump scares can't really fundamentally work in comics. You can do things with page turns and things like that, and that's fantastic. But the reality is, you want to always affect your reader in a way. You want to try as quickly as possible to have something that's relatable. One of the tricks that I really used in these stories was almost consistently trying to use first-person narration, no matter if it was in the class of 1894, where I was writing a story about a 13-year-old girl being put into a boarding school, or in The Monday After Monday, which is a very autobiographical story about a father and son kind of finding comfort and joy in a world that's probably ending. But I told it from that first person point of view. And that was really important for me. I wanted to give a voice to it, saying like you're going to connect with me because you're hearing this through that character's voice. And then I'm going to pull the rug out from under you. If you make it personal and then move into that thing where you're scaring someone or affecting somebody, it works so much better. You can use those page turns and I think that it's absolutely a goofy story, but one that, like, on the last page is one of just really unsettling kind of. But a Haunthology Silent Night was literally a gift to people that were supporting me during over Christmas during COVID. I did this short story about me effectively hearing Santa Claus at my house, but then the thing at the end isn't really it's pretty creepy. But you turn that page, you're like, oh, this idiot's hearing Santa outside. He's going to go sneak in and try to surprise him, and then it ends up being something much worse than that. but like you can set things up and build things and then have that last page that affects somebody. It's not a jump scare, but like use those visuals effectively. You know, have somebody have a visceral connection to something and then show something that's a hellish nightmare, and it gets you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. And some good tips there, and just you know, from the perspective and I think grounding your horror, like grounding the horror elements in things that everyone can relate to. You know, even if it's the most supernatural, you know, Lovecraftian elder god, like who knows what. By doing things like putting people in real situations and real struggles, like to start, can really pull people in. I think that those are good tips. So, you know, you're doing some interesting things with the campaign. One of the things that I've seen that I haven't seen very often is you are selling original art, but you're doing it because this is an anthology. You're sort of packaging the pages up so that people can actually buy a full story and own full individual stories, which I think is a cool way to do that, to even up the value of it versus hey, you get one random page from one random story, right?
Right. Well, I mean, I have such a connection to this. Yeah. First of all, I like the idea that each of these stories can almost stay complete. You know, I know that you always run the risk that things are going to be parceled off or whatever after people get them. But the reality of it is that if I can actually sort of say, hey, this is a special thing, and I would like for you to have it all at once. You know, I've been very fortunate in my career. I have had several instances where someone will come up to me and they'll say, this comic that you drew affected me in an incredible way. I want to buy the whole thing. And that is beautiful. That is a huge thing as a creative. And you know, I've been lucky with you know, I sell a lot of original art.
Now, do you sell mostly through your own stuff, or do you have an art dealer that you go through?
I work with Cadence Comic Art as my art dealer, and Paolo is I've worked with him forever. He's family at this point, and just, you know, you know, if I go to shows, I carry my own portfolios, but like online, you can get stuff from Paolo, and that's been really that allowing people to get the work and to be able to easily get the work has been an important thing in my career, and it's really made a difference. But with this, I kind of wanted to do the whole stories. You know, I was like, hey, I'm going to try this. You know, that right there, Kit Kat is on the screen. You know, and that's a 2-page story, and it's, you know, very, very fun graphics to it, you know, and it's $472 for 2 pages and the book, which is, you know, a pretty damn good deal for original artwork and the book together.
And I'm curious, just to stick on this for a second. You can take it where you want it, but this is something that creators out there I know struggle with. Is like, all right, I'm going to sell this original art. How much do I sell it for, and how do I, and I know that, and you're probably past this point in your career, but a lot of creators, like, they're like, am I going to be judged if I put X dollar amount on this thing? Will I be judged if it's too high, if it's too low? Like, and the short answer is, yeah, probably you're going to be judged no matter what you do. But like, how have you approached, you know, pricing original art styles, and then sort of like the psychology behind that, or the fears that creators have?
That's actually a really important question. I think that first off, the thing that you hit on, where you're like fearing judgment, right? Here's the thing: somebody's going to judge you for whatever you do. Yeah. If you charge too little, someone's going to be like, "Oh, you're an idiot." If somebody charges too much, they're going to be like, "Who is this guy?" You know, that's going to happen. But the reality of it is people are going to think what they're going to think, and you have to be true to yourself. Like the market bears what the market can bear. If you have people that love what you do, and you put it out there, and you say, okay, well, this piece, you know, this is a 3-page story. and I'm going to charge $500 for that 3-page story. Somebody can either get that or not, and that's fine. Try to be realistic with yourself. Try to really say, like, you know, like, and I think looking at art dealers like Cadence, you know, is a really good example. For instance, if you're looking at Cadence comic art and you see, you're like, hey, I'm going to look at Declan Shelby's artwork because Declan's amazing and I love his stuff. How much is a page from Declan? And you look at it and you're like, oh, that's a $300 page. And then you look at what you do and you're saying, like, you know, oh, it's a talking head scene. I'm going to charge $500 for it. If Declan's selling something for $300 and you're saying 500 and it's not something glorious and extra special or something like that, more power to you. I hope it sells. It may or it may not, but, you know, just like look at things around you. Look at what the price on stuff is, and kind of judge based on that. You know, the other thing I want to warn you about, though, is also, like, we as artists tend to diminish ourselves. We always tend to be like, you know, like think about the last time that you were there as an artist, and somebody was like, "What do you want for this?" And you're like, $3, and you know. Yeah. We all do that. I to this day I do. I think that there were stories as we were laying them all out and pricing everything, and I was like, I don't know. I was kind of doing that thing, and it's like do as I say, not as I do. Don't do that. Like, you've got to actually not diminish yourself. And I think that there is perceived value. If you say that something, like, if something is beautiful, if it looks fantastic, and you say, hey, here's the thing, this is a painted cover that I did. I love the way it came out. It's gorgeous. You know, it's $1,000. There is perceived value in that. And yeah, sure, to a degree, maybe you're like, well, you know, I've only done a few things. They're creator owned. People are seeing me out there, but we build fans and we build relationships. And if you know in your heart that your art is worth that $1,000, ask that $1,000. Maybe it won't sell right away. Maybe you'll need to adjust your prices. Maybe you're taking that risk, but, like, take the risk on yourself first, you know, see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I was just getting started, you know, doing $5 commissions, you know, like doing crazy stuff. And then I just was like, all right, I'm going to get crazy. I'm going to up my commissions to $10 at conventions. And then it was like, didn't sell any, I sold more, and then doubled it again and doubled it again. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. Like, if people want a commission for you, like, they're like price usually isn't the number one factor in this decision. It's really, how much do I want it, and what kind of connection do I have to this creator, this work, and other things. And so, you know, a lot of times I think, you know, we as creators are, you know, we have a tendency to spend other people's money for them, or make other people's decisions for them, as opposed to just putting out a good offer, one that we would be excited about, and seeing whether or not they'd take us up for that as well. And I also think, you know, we tend to judge like whether or not we would buy something for that, when, you know, our situation may be completely different from someone else who is a massive collector and you know, has different resources. Yeah. So.
Well, and I think that you really hit it on the head too. We build these stories about what might happen beforehand, and we let that freeze us. You know, and look, the same thing applies to even the pricing of individual, you know, the tiers themselves. You're looking at something and you're like, it's an oversized hardcover special edition, and then part of me is like, is $47 too much? You know, like, you're having to ask yourself that, and then you do the smart thing and you do all of your math and you break down exactly how much you're going to have from your printer. and how much the shipping on this thing is going to cost, and all these factors. And then you're like, I kind of need to charge what I need to charge. And if I make something that is beautiful, and if I make something that is real and connects with my audience, they will pay for it because they value that thing. Don't diminish yourself. Don't decide that you need to charge $15 for that 160-page hardcover beauty. You know, just like, again, believe in what you're doing a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Kickstarter and the crowdfunding world has kind of changed that a little bit. And it's shown that, like, when you get out of the, all right, well, this is going to show up on a comic book shelf and it's going to be purchased by a retailer who's primarily serving a customer base that buys in quantity, in like is wants quantity all the time. So you know, they're very price sensitive around a $4 or $5 price point. Like, the crowdfunding market is different than that. People aren't going, like, well, there are some that are just loading up on Kickstarters and get slammed every month with their credit card bill. But from I think most people out there, like, they're backing maybe 5 to a dozen projects a year, and and willing to spend a little bit more for those things. I'm one of my first conventions, I was doing the, like, print on demand, like, full color, and it was like, all right, I have to sell this for $3 because that's what comics are going for, and it's costing me $2.95 to make this thing. Exactly. So if I only sell 5,000 copies, I might be able to cover my table. The math quickly doesn't work. But that is where doing things like you're doing, where, hey, signed version costs a little bit more. Get the book and the original art a little bit more. Are you doing, like, I see you have a story commission in here, a bonus story commission as a high-end pledge. What other sort of premium stuff are you doing for this campaign that backers could take advantage of? Looks like at least one has grabbed your $1,000 pledge for a bonus story, which is awesome.
Yeah. So one of the things that you always have to fight with when you're going into these things is, as artists, people really want the art, right? Like people love commissions and they love doing those things. And there was a real temptation for me to give in and be like, okay, I'm going to have, 10 $1,000 painted commissions or whatever it is. The reality of it is that I have stuff that I have to finish, and I have commissions that I need to get done from years, not years, but like from before. I feel badly if I take on stuff and it sits there. I made a mistake recently and realized that I had lost a commission for a long time that I needed to have gotten done. And I felt horrible about that. And it was up to me to make it right. I messaged, I'm like, hey, I'm going to fix this. It's going to be better than it was before. It's going to, but like, there's the temptation to always take on more stuff to try to get things. For me, I really felt like the original art for this was a premium tier. Getting that, having options for the bonus story. So the bonus stories, the concept behind that was, I wanted to do a thing, like a very personal thing, where someone could say, give me 4 prompts. They could say, I actually came up with this one the other day, and it made me laugh. They can give me 4 prompts. They can say, a lost child. It takes place in the woods. It has a werewolf and a monkey saves the kid. You could be like, those 4 things, or whatever it is, and then I will write and draw a story around those prompts, and then I'll make that story. It will be in the book, and then I give you that original page based on your prompts. And even with that, like, if somebody's like, hey, my kid is an adorable little goober, can you draw my kid as that kid in that story? I'll be like, well, I'll try to approximate your kid, and put him in that story. So those are those special tiers. So that's a thing that I can do because I'm probably going to be writing and drawing those stories sort of anyway, but this is just building, building that. I wanted to do the art tiers. I wanted to do those special add-on stories that you could get. Like I did 2 of the one pagers at $1,000 a piece. I have a 4-pager at $4,000 and a 7-pager at $7,000 because that's an incredible amount of work and time and energy. But you also get all the extra fun stuff with those too. You get the signed book, you get the page, you get all of that stuff. Those are premium tiers. Other things that I did that were really important to me was going in and I wanted to have, it's something that I know that you do a lot too, when you offer those kind of all-in bundle kind of things. So that's a great way to do it, where people can get the t-shirt and the stickers and the pin and the coin and all these things all at once. You look at that and you're like, wow, people are excited about this and they want to go all in. Creating those premium bundles, it's just a smart way to do it, because I think that we're not demanding that anybody do any of this.
Yeah.
We're not saying like we're not holding anybody at knife point saying you've got to choose, the upgrades or whatever, but we offer them because if people want that and they're excited about the beautiful product that you've made, the thing that you've offered to them that excites them. I jokingly it's part of this. There's a thing. One of the tiers is a Haun crate, right? It's like a loot crate.
Yeah.
It's, same thing, that kind of like what you do, but it's a Haun crate. So you get a crate of awesomeness shipped to your house, and it has a ton of stuff. Generally, the stuff like what I did over the course of an entire year. There it is, right there.
There it is.
So a carefully selected crate of items from me. And this one is the HAUNTHOLOGY Haun crate. So it's all of the HAUNTHOLOGY stuff plus stuff that tangentially connects back. So like there are things from the Red Mother that sort of appear in HAUNTHOLOGY. I'm giving you the three Red Mother trades. There's the little cute little pink thing there in the corner. That's from 40 Seconds. 40 Seconds connects back to HAUNTHOLOGY. There's characters and things that are in it. You get an original page of artwork. It's not from HAUNTHOLOGY. It's from my backlog. So I think it's a Realm page there, but it's a good page of my artwork. It might be from DC stuff. It might be from like a page from Batwoman or from one of my creator-owned books or whatever it is. But it's a page of original artwork, and I just put all that stuff in there, which gives people that loot crate kind of feeling, right? That thing where you get a box of awesomeness delivered to your house. But this is also the kind of thing where it's like it doesn't replace going to the convention and buying everything on somebody's table, but you do it. Like think about those times when you go to a convention and you walk by and Mike Mignola is there, right? And he's got like the artwork, and he's got a couple of t-shirts that they've done and a bag and all these, and you just go in and you swoop in and you just spend you spend a couple grand and you just get everything.
Yeah.
And then you go and explain that to your partner on why you spent a couple grand, but he's worth it. And I want to give that experience.
Yeah, and there's always been a few people that I've known as conventions. It's like they come up at the end and they're like, okay, what's new? I'll take everything that you got that's new and a few high end stuff, and that's right. What it is. Like we have a backer, Comics Tribe backer, that like he literally for the last five campaigns he's taken whatever the highest pledge tier is, and we've like the business part of me is like, well, let's keep offering up something higher and see until it doesn't work anymore. Right. I haven't gone and dropped like a $10,000 pledge. I probably left a lot of money on the table just by not creating it. But it is fun that those people are out there. And
right. But then the cool thing with that, and I think this is the tricky part. It's like, well, that is a huge amount of support, and you flipping love that, right? That changes your campaign. When somebody gets a high end tier like that, they are ensuring more work from you. They're investing in the future of you as a creator. That's a huge thing. But when you put up a $7,000 tier or a $10,000 tier, you also do that thing where you're like, well, I've got to make this worth this person's money.
Yeah.
So you get really creative and really cool. You're sitting there thinking about like, I'm going to add this in and I'm going to add this in, because you're also running it like as someone running a Kickstarter, you're not only thinking about it based on what you can make, you're thinking about it from what you're giving that person. You're literally thinking about it saying like, you know, it's almost like gift giving, right? Like you get excited about the holidays because of whatever, but then you also get excited about the idea of seeing that person's face as they open the thing. And that's sort of the same thing that you're creating here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Another thing that I want to give you a little praise on is I think you've done a great job so far with your stretch goals and your approach to stretch goals. You know, one of the principles that we try to teach in ComixLaunch is not to stretch yourself with the stretch goals. Right. and to, you know, focus on doing things that will improve the project, but won't fundamentally alter the dynamics of that of fulfilling on that projects. So things like paper upgrades or adding things that will fit nicely with the packaging that you've already decided to do, or the spot UV upgrades. These are all really cool things to be able to do to the book that, you know, from a fan sense, hey, this is awesome stuff. Thank you. But from you and the business sense, they actually, you know, don't fundamentally blow up your budget spreadsheets and all of that.
Well, and you have to be very, very cautious about this stuff. I mean, the reality of it is that, and I think that you talk about this regularly on the show, and I think that people need to hear this more, is like, be very, very aware of your margins on this stuff. It's not greed. That's not it. It's actually business sense. It's understanding that that you can give value to something, but if your cost, like, you know, if you have a $1 per backer addition to your cost, and you do it wrong, and suddenly it's like it's $125 per backer to add the thing, you've lost money.
Yep.
You want to make sure that every time that you do a stretch goal, that there is, you know, there's margin for error. There's all these things sort of built into it, you know, which is why I'm a huge fan. You know, giving people things like PDFs, like digital packages of stuff. Like, I've got some stuff coming where like literally people are going to get digital copies of previous sketchbooks, digital copies of previous creator-owned comics that I've done. So you can get, you know, like issue 1 of the Beauty, you know, you just get a digital copy of that for free because that comes with the thing. The more that you actually, you know, do add-ons that are digital things, it's still work for you to do, but like you're adding value to something without adding physical value. There's always that temptation to be like, man, I think I should add this bonus making of book. I want a second hardcover book to go with this thing.
Yeah.
And then you need to slap yourself, because the reality of it is, if you're doing that, you're suddenly adding the cost of an entire other thing, which is crazy, you know, and that's brutal, and you're going to blow your budget. And look, you do this, I'm doing this. We want to not only cover the cost of the thing, it would be very, very nice if we could take home a few bucks to, you know, buy that kid a jungle gym, as opposed to having him jump out of the crib, or, you know, to be able to, you know, I always joke that like, I bring my kids to conventions with me occasionally so that they can see the state of their shoes and understand that, that, you know, we're not rolling in it and probably can use every penny that we can get.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, and that, you know, bringing up the kids sort of brings me up to a question that I wanted to ask you and get your take on it. As someone that has, you know, obviously had longevity in this industry, a creator in my community said that, like, she's sort of personally been really feeling like that the creative work life balance is getting, you know, out of hand, like a little bit out of hand, and feels like, you know, is that what's required to be successful? Is that you just basically have to make work your entire life? And I know you're someone with a family, and you've done cool creative projects with your kids. But like, how do you sort of see the whole creative, like, work life balance? And has there been anything that you've been able to, any tips or any things that you've been able to employ that have at least made those struggles that we all face more manageable? Or
can we do like a do as I say, not as I do thing?
Absolutely. And I also understand that asking the work-life balance question in the midst of a big Kickstarter campaign is like, it's hard to talk like a hypocrite when you're doing all the podcasts, all the shows, doing all the updates and all the things to make your campaign a success. But
I really wish that I had like a cheeseburger here that I could eat while I talk about making sure to do yoga and eating salad while you're doing a Kickstarter.
Yeah,
just like a pizza in one hand and a, you know, something. It's hard. Look, the reality of what we do as creatives is, you have stories you want to tell. You want to get these things out there. It's sheer excitement to make things, and it's even more exciting to have it connect with people. When you realize that you made something that people are excited about, that people love, that people connect to, and they want to give back for your time, that's a beautiful thing. It also messes with you to a point. Like we, in comics specifically, I believe we don't have the healthiest relationship with ourselves. This is an industry where, you know, I've taken gigs, as you know, before, where the deadline existed before I even was part of the project. They were like, "Hey, you know, look, here's the deal. It's this book, and I know that, you know, I know it's probably a pretty good gig for you, but it's 3 weeks. Can you do it?" And you're like, "I guess I won't sleep or really eat much, or I hope I can apologize to my family for not taking a bath for that time, because baths take up, you know, 20 minutes, and I could draw a panel in that," or, you know, like whatever. You just whittle away at your time and your life with these projects sometimes. As time has gone by, and especially now, I'm 45 years old. I've been doing this for 20 years, right? Which is crazy. I'm getting to that point where I've almost made comics for half my life.
yeah.
You know, you have to make time for yourself, and you have to take care of yourself ultimately. One of the things that I keep saying over and over again when it comes to making things is, like, take care of your back and neck, please. We sit like this and we draw at a desk or whatever, and we've got these giant melons, or at least I do, because I'm genetically predisposed to it, I suppose. We come from a big head family. But you know, you're leaning over and all of this, you know, and you sit there for 8 hours doing that, or 10 hours. I mean, you barely remember to go to the bathroom, or get up and drink a water or whatever. And I think that there's this tendency to need to get the thing done. Like, the deadline is there and it's not moving for you, and you just have to get it done. You know, I just, to be perfectly 100% honest with you, I had such a laundry list of things. Even working on this project for 3 months, I prepped for HAUNTHOLOGY for 3 months, on top of the year of making all this stuff. 3 months of just building this, working on my newsletter, working on communication, working on all these things. I worked on it for 3 months. In addition to that, I still had, in the last 48 hours before launch, this terrifying list of stuff that I needed to get done.
Yeah.
And I was, you know, staying up 19 hours, you know, working 19-hour days or whatever to get it done. And you gotta kind of do that. But like day one, I did a like a countdown to launch, right? I was on Facebook Live, I was counting down, I was so excited, and I was sitting there and I was like, I'm, I mean, I'm a pale guy anyway, but I was like, I am extra pale. Why are my eyes so dark under them? And I
Just
was like,
adjusting the tint and
yeah. I'm like, why can't I make it look better? But the reality is like I was sitting there and I was like, I have to answer questions from fans. I have to be on and run this thing, and I am beyond exhausted. So that's the longest way around your thing. It basically just saying like, take care of yourself, take a nap, let yourself, like take the day off if you can. If you have a family, I think the hardest thing that you realize, there's that what's the Cats in the Cradle, that song, right?
yeah,
That
yeah.
and
Listen to that
as
once a month just to
yeah, just sitting there, you see it, every time that comes on anywhere. If you're out at a restaurant, that song comes on, and like look around at the dads, and they're just all like, messed up by that. But you only get that time once, and these jobs are important. Every project that you do builds your path, it builds your career, it builds on what's going to come next. Every Kickstarter that you launch, every book that you launch, everything that you do is an investment in the future. Every project, if you do it right and if you focus, only builds. But if you don't take care of yourself along the way, what is it worth? So just if you think that you've got 3 months until your launch, tack an extra week on there. Tack a couple weeks on there just to pad out your time. And on Saturday, maybe just only spend that with your family or whatever. It's
yeah.
good.
Yeah, and honestly, that of all of the things that I've done over the past year and a half or so, I think I'm getting better at it, because I am very much the kind of person that sort of sets up deadlines and constraints, and then I feel the pressure of it, and then I realize, wait a minute, I'm my own boss. I am the slave driver that is setting these things. And if I just gave myself an extra 2 weeks, or if I just eliminated these 5 activities and pushed them from must do to, if you can get to it, you can get to it. Like just doing that, all of a sudden, instead of making it feel like you're a grind and you're white knuckling at it, it's like, oh, okay. Whether this Kickstarter launches now or 2 weeks from now, grand scheme of things, 3 launches from now, not going to matter. So yeah. So, and going a little bit easy on ourselves. That's the other thing that I said to this creator. It's like the entire world has been having a work-life crisis, work versus life balance crisis over the past decade anyway, because a lot of us, our work moved to our life, and regardless of what you're doing. And so, give yourself a little bit of a break there if you're feeling that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and speaking about building towards something, and this thing builds the next thing, I want to sort of bring things to a close with what's next for you, man. What are you excited about for the rest of 2021? And do you see, based on how awesome this project is going for you, like, do you see more Kickstarter in your future?
Definitely. I think that each project needs to fit the thing, right? Like I have projects that I really am looking at specifically for Kickstarter. I think that I'm looking at, more creator-owned stuff just in the mainstream. I've got a lot of things. I've got some stuff coming out. I'm writing some stuff for DC right now. I'm doing a lot more writing. It's been, I'm getting a little old for this constant art game, and I have a lot of stories I want to tell, so I'm appreciating that. I definitely, this model works. If you put the time in, if you put the energy in, you can, using things like BackerKit launch, you're able to see the data as it's coming in. There is proof in the pudding for a lot of this stuff. if you take the time, build your audience, connect with people in a truly genuine way, Kickstarter is a fantastic thing to use. And I'm going to keep, I've got at least 2 projects that I'm looking at in 2022 that are probably just going to be Kickstarters, because that's the way to do it. And I love the process, and I love the connectivity. And also, please ask me this question again during the fulfillment stage, and see if I actually am just like a crazed maniac at that point.
Yeah.
But right now, with the success, being 55 hours into my Kickstarter, I'm feeling pretty good.
Well, yeah, and we'll definitely check back, and who knows, maybe your next horror anthology will be fulfillment-based horror. The guy whose hands have been torn apart by folding Gemini comics, or those Gemini comic flash mailers.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, this was awesome, Jeremy. I'm really glad we got to have this chat. I'm glad your project is doing so great on Kickstarter. It is HAUNTHOLOGY over here on the Kickstarter platform, and it has a full month left to go over there. So
28 days.
28 days. And
Crazy.
Yeah, we hope you will all check that out and connect with, what's the best place for people to connect with you? I know you have a Patreon, correct? And is there a social media of choice as well?
Honestly, I like Instagram a lot. I love the idea of, the easy, images, checking, people seeing just glimpses into my world, and, getting to see all the fun stuff that I'm either drawing or putting out there. I check Instagram pretty much constantly. That's kind of my place. Twitter, I'm on Twitter too. Both Instagram and Twitter, I'm under Jer Haun, JerHaun. You can catch me on Facebook, just my name, Jeremy Haun. I'm on Patreon. You can find me under Jeremy Haun there too.
Awesome, Jeremy. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time and wisdom and expertise with the ComixLaunch listeners.
No, thanks so much.
All right. And thanks everyone for tuning in and watching, and we can't wait to see what you launch next.
Excellent.